think about it, I mean, it's like going to Hawaii then was like going to a foreign country. So you're tied together because you're here for an experience that once you see this Emerald Island, you know it's not Nebraska. The strength of being in Hawaii is having someone to share it with and be part of it. So families were very much an integral role of the military experience for those of higher rank.
My father was Captain Ralph Albert Redburn, stationed at Hickam Air Force Base on December 7th, 1941.
My father was in the Navy. He was stationed on the USS Lexington.
The morning of December the 7th, we woke up early because my father was taking us into the aquarium in Honolulu, and my father looked out the window and he said, "We're under attack, get to the shelter." And with that, we moved.
He heard planes coming in. He said to my mother, Pauline, he called her Polly, "Polly, let's go out and watch our planes come in." So they went outside, and much to their shock, there was a great big red ball on the plane, and he realized, oh my gosh, these are the Japanese, and told my mother, "Run in, get in the house, they're not ours, oh my God, it's the Japs."
All of a sudden, I remember this plane coming in. Now, we live near Hickam Field. We had planes all the time. This one was so very low that it actually shook the lampshades on the lamps.
My father was a naval aviator. On the morning of December the 7th, at 7:40 a.m., I was dressed. I was getting ready to go to chapel on base.
You could see the red circles on them, and my mother swore that she saw a face with goggles on it looking down on us. Maybe that was the plane that dropped something and left shrapnel all inside of our car.
I heard these very loud noises, like a drone of bees almost. It just, all of a sudden, there was just, and the house started to shake. So I walked out to the front porch and looked up, and they were just coming over our quarters, and one pilot looked right down at me. I looked up at him, and we had eye contact.
We started hearing firing of weapons, machine gun-like firing, and also large booms and explosions. Well, my brother and I felt it was just another firing exercise.
When my father ran out the door, he yelled at me and he said, "You wanted to know what bastard meant." Well, I was 12 and I was very naive anyway. And I had asked him a few days earlier what the word bastard meant. I'd heard it. I'd heard the word and I didn't know what it meant. And as he ran out the door, he said, "Those are bastards."
My father kind of looked suspicious. So what he did is he ran into the house and went to our small radio that had this large dial in the front, and he had to use that dial to tune in the station. And so he tuned in one of the local stations and found out that he had to report to duty.
And my father had duty on Sunday, so my mother drove my father to the harbor. And as they're driving to the harbor, all these natives are standing outside watching the planes because they thought it was another practice war. A bullet then hit our car right in the windshield on the passenger side, which is where my father was sitting. And my father said, "This is the real thing. Stop this car immediately." And my mother slams on her brakes. Bus behind her hit the rear end of the car and smashed it in. And he got out and he said, "Get out." And so my mother got out of the car. He got into the car, drove it off to the harbor. And my mother was left standing on the side of the road.
My mother went over and jumped into the driver's side. My father kissed all of us goodbye, and we had to leave him there on post.
I mean, this war is going on, and the buses are still running. So she's taking the bus, and she finally gets to the bottom of our mountain. And at the bottom of the mountain, there was a little restaurant store. And she went in. It was owned by Japanese. The radio was on when she walked in, and they turned it off.
There was a lot of smoke. There was a lot of chaos, vehicles going in all directions, people running all over. All of this was the scene that my mother had to drive her children through right during the attack. There was this soldier or airman who had apparently suffered burns, and he was on fire, literally, and he came running to our car. My mother told me to be sure the door is locked.
I don't know why I was so concerned about Mother, maybe because she was crippled in one leg. But I was there patting my mother on the back. "It's okay, Mom, it's okay, Mom." And she'd say, "Oh, Bud, Bud." And I said, "Daddy will be home pretty soon, Mom." I turned into the mother.
My mom is a hero. She had to drive through that with eight of us children and all by herself. She had to have the courage to go through that tragedy on her own.
You've got to realize what affects a 4-year-old. Sirens, that means something's happened. Loud noises, that means something's happened. These planes came over in waves. About the time you wanted to take your hands off your ears, another wave would come again.
And when we got back, by the side of the quarters, there was a sailor walking along in front by the ships out in front of our quarters, and he called us and asked us if we wanted to come over and see the dead Jap pilot. And my mother said we could, so we went. And I really, we were looking at his body, and it was not like it was a human being, and I was glad he was dead.
December 7th was an event that I remember. And I remember that event till this day and for the rest of my life. And it is a different recollection. It is from the target area, looking up into the sky,